All right.
Well, how's it going?
It's going good, man.
Thanks for inviting me into your studio.
Yeah.
We're here at the Your Brand Voice, beautiful studio you got here. Why don't you introduce yourself? This is Bryan Bruce. He's a businessman here in town, and we're going to introduce you guys to a concept, what I think is a really cool concept we've got for a show. So tell us about yourself and what you do.
The whole thing that we do is help people tell their story, and there's a lot of value in just getting the word out about your business, whether it's a restaurant or a marketing agency or a consultant or any type of business. Just get the word out that you exist, and so it's your brand voice. And then a lot of what we do is local, hyper local stuff. Like helping restaurants or small businesses in local communities connect with the local audience. And so the concept of a local podcast or video podcast was an idea that you had tossed around, we have tossed around for a while. And with the advancement of technology, it just makes sense to record it. Record it, push it out there and just talk about what we're seeing, And we're located right here in the heart of Tuscaloosa, right behind the former Dominic, so a lot of changes there to talk about.
Oh yeah.
And but a lot of changes all over our city, from the government to the small business climate to just changes in the Orlando area. So a lot going on. And so the idea of a podcast called In the Loop, Winter Springs In the Loop, is I think is appropriate. And so here we are. We're testing out this system.
Yeah.
There might be some adjustments in the future. Better background, better sound. But the whole goal is to done's better than perfect. Get the word out. Let AI do a lot of what we need it to do, and then publish it, and then kind of do it again.
Well, and the novelty of having an uncut conversation, nothing scripted. I mean, you asked me when I came in, what are we talking about? I've got a few things to talk about, but it's that kind of dialogue which I think is very important, particularly in this kind of 30-second soundbite era that we live in, where we kind of talk past each other instead of talking to each other. A lot of good decision making is, I think, stinted by that mindset.
That script or that 30-second reel to get your attention. You don't really get to really break it down.
Right. And how do you solve our city's water problems in 30 seconds?
Right.
It's that kind of problem, which a lot of the political climate doesn't help. In these commission meetings we watch, where it's just not a good context for the kind of dialogue I think that people are looking for to bring folks into the know. So we're going to do over the next couple months, trial basis, is talk to people who are knowledgeable, talk to some community leaders and experts about different stuff with a very local Winter Springs, Seminole County, Central Florida focus. And nothing will be edited, nothing will be scripted. We roll the cameras and now we're talking.
Yeah, I mean, people are starting with the short form and as their go-to, but it should be the long form so people can really get to dig in and listen to where you come from. And then you break that down to short form if necessary.
Right.
But really the long form, and we looked at the last election, the way that podcasting and this long form really contributed to getting to know the candidates. I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes to what is possible. So it's important to be unscripted, kind of have a basic idea of what you want to talk about, but be unscripted so you can come from the heart. People can get to know you. Transparency is key, and
Right.
so this format lends to that well, and we've got our ear to the ground with a lot of things going on, so it's nice to share, and that's hence the name, In the Loop Winter Springs. So
And that's one of the things that I think we connect on. You mentioned ear to the ground. You've got a great data operation. We kind of share that digital interest. I mean, our Winter Springs Community Association has been for the last 6 or 7 years running a very sophisticated technique to understand where the residents are coming from. And I know you're doing the same thing, here, because again, from a market standpoint, you got to know where your people are at, and to have that high level of engagement. Which
when I was in Dr. Phillips before I moved here 6 years ago. So the Southwest Orlando, Sand Lake Road, Restaurant Row, and really a very diverse transient community. And when I came to Winter Springs, it's such a different, different group of people, a different set of problems, different leaders, different people to account for. And so really using this data-driven approach to listen whether it's the local group channels or whether it's building a website and kind of seeing what pages people, you can really quickly see what's important to the people here. So we feel like we have a lot of information, but I think that the more we produce this, the more information we're going to get about what people want. And I think that's going to help our city really pave the way for the future, because a lot's in transition right now, not only in Winter Springs, but in the whole world. You know, we represent a lot of clients from a lot of different, you know, business types and categories, and there's a lot of apprehension out there right now, a lot of fear, a lot of stress, and whether it's, you know, I mean, it's got to be real because people are feeling it, and if you're feeling it, but whether it's going to be short term, long term, nobody really knows, and I think that's contributing to a lot of anxiety. So these types of
just have the worst and then the best days in the history of the market, like within a couple days of each other.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a realness to that,
right.
And like from a local business perspective here in the city, you're running a business, operating it. You're kind of right here. I was going to ask you, Dominic's, the old Dominic spot, the 7-Eleven. You know, what do you know about that? And I mean, seems like a new saga every day with some of the changeover and different things that have happened. So what's the latest?
So, like, you know, I said I came from Restaurant Row. You know, I literally live within a mile of 100 restaurants, and so I feel like I'm a restaurant. You know, plus I market restaurants, so I really focus on restaurants and their health and what they were doing. And I think Dominic's since the time I moved here 6 years was kind of going downhill. I think everybody noticed that. You see their reviews, you listen to the chatter online, and so something had to happen, and something did happen. And but really, what happened was this whole complex was sold, and it was sold. And when it was sold, it was discovered by the new owner that there was a leases that didn't fit the climate today. So everybody got renegotiated, including me. You know, I had a lease that was a year left, and I was forced to renegotiate immediately or lose when my lease was up. And I didn't want to lose. I love being here. I love being able to drive my golf cart here to work and maybe, you know, go down to the country club after work for 9 holes. So I didn't want to leave. But I think I'm just a little business. Imagine a restaurant, the impact that had on them. So there was a lot of shuffle to happen there. Then you had the 7-Eleven go down, which is not the same owner. But what happened with Dominic's is, from what I understand, is that, you know, Dom was kind of backing out of the business. It was just, I think, his age and just everything was kind of bearing down on him. And so he tried to salvage that lease, and he brought in another operator, and it was a local guy, Robin. And Robin had good intentions, no restaurant experience, but good intentions. And unfortunately, you got to have restaurant experience. I mean, it's a very difficult business. It's not something you're retiring going into. Like he mentioned during a city meeting that he was planning on retiring, yet he was opening a restaurant. That doesn't make sense because this is one of the most difficult things you'll do is a restaurant. So you're not retiring, you're actually getting actively involved.
But now Robin's the guy that's now at 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
right?
so you had Dominic's, and Robin came in and did Marie's.
So he's not at Dominic's at all anymore?
Nobody's there anymore.
Okay.
Robin had a falling out with Dominic. Made a deal with Robin to save the lease and stay in operation, just change the name, and then they had a falling out, and so then Dominic brought in another person to do a concept called Julius's, which he got off the ground and started running and started to stabilize, but then he ran into problems because there was a lawsuit between the landlord and even Robin. And then one day, you know, I'm here and I look out and there's police out there and
somebody was trespassed, right?
And Robin was trespassed. So
wow.
So now you have, you know, so that's when the Julius guy came in. But then there was another police show up, and that's when Robin went to court and got an order that all the equipment was his. And so for the next 2 weeks, he emptied the place.
Okay.
So everything's gone. Like even the 3,000-pound pizza oven was removed from the place. So it's not easy for someone to just jump back in there. They've got to really want it. And we actually this morning saw a group come in on a golf cart and take a tour on the inside.
Okay.
So someone local is looking at it. So I think it'll get some.
So the courts essentially backed up Robin's claim to ownership of the equipment.
Correct.
Which now he's using, as I heard him say in a commission meeting recently, using to try to revamp the old 7-Eleven.
Yeah, he moved it out of here. He's moved it into storage bins outside of the 7-Eleven. He signed a lease with 7-Eleven, and he's trying to put a deli in there called the Clubhouse. And that 7-Eleven's been down for
It's been a number of years.
Years.
Yeah.
And in Florida, without the AC running, if you don't, there's going to be some problems in there, whether it's leaks or mold, a lot of repairs. So he's doing his best to get that done. And he moved all the equipment from here to there to kind of help make that transition. But then he got a red tag from the city because he didn't get the proper permits. And he claims that he's not doing anything structural, so he's just kind of pulling things out, which I don't know if it's allowed or not, but that's what happened. So there's a red tag on the door. He's kind of at an impasse right now. But I know he wants to get it open because he needs cash flow. And
so bigger picture as a business guy in the city, like the reputation is that Winter Springs is a tough place to do business. That's perception. I don't know if it's real. I don't own a business in the city, but that's the perception that, and you see it with all these places in town center that have a lot of turnover. And so I was paying attention to something that happened, caught my eye, where they made a change with their code enforcement group. What do you know about that change and some of the rationale?
Well,
because Victoria was like all over. By the way, this guy happens to be married to Commissioner Bruce, and so he's not. I'm not asking you to speak for her, but just you watch the meetings like we all do.
People accuse me of speaking for her, but if you know Victoria, there's no speaking for her.
No,
we have debates just like you and I. We don't agree on everything. Some things we do, but I'm just a resident trying to convince her, just like everybody else.
So you're a resident. You're watching these things. You've got a good, connection with one of the commissioners. So why was that change necessary?
Well, one thing about Victoria is she wants to be accessible, and she wants to listen to you, and then she wants to try to solve the problem, almost to a fault. In the beginning of her,
she's a politician. Don't they teach you that in politician school? You're not actually there to solve problems, right?
She wants to, and she was told that's not your job, and so she got slapped on the wrist by trying to go and solve the problems that she was hearing, and she had to learn her place and working with the city manager better, and I think she's learned a lot, but she still hasn't lost that I want to solve problem in her, and so she would hear a lot of residents complain about the process, and it was something that was constantly coming up, whether it was a phone call, an email, visits to her website, comments, when she's coming out of meetings. There was constant, just discussion about how hard it is to do business. And, and then, one simple example, we do this here, and we need fast internet. We need fast internet to go live and do other things. And so I brought in Huawei to do fiber, and I paid them like 3 months ago. They've ran the lines. The city won't give them the final sign off to program the building. Right. So I don't know if that's contributing to it, but
that's still true now.
Still true.
I have it at my house.
It's in my house too. So they came to me and said, "Do you want to upgrade?" I said, "Yes." Sign off. Okay, we haven't installed it yet, but you're the first, so we'll get it going. 3 months later, I call them. They said, "Yeah, everything's ready to go. We're just waiting on the city to sign off."
The residential areas have it permitted, but not the commercial areas.
So this building does not have fiber, and I need it badly.
Wow.
So we're hopefully
it's the same department.
So that may be something that I'm not familiar with, but it's just from a business owner. It seems to me that someone could just make that happen, right? So maybe that's part of the climate of not business friendly.
Well, I've heard for years that it's just the mindset, right? So the question: why can't we keep businesses going in town center? And the answer is always like, well, it's because we don't have enough residents within the square mile because we've got, and they always point to the fact that you have this big body of water there. And the premise of that is that water is not the most attractive thing imaginable to anywhere else.
Right.
You die to be next to water.
Right.
And yet, because we're not thinking outside the box here, it's like we're making our greatest asset a liability, and it's because I think it's because we don't have true leadership, starting at the top with the mayor, and we've all got our thoughts about the different personalities on the dais right now, but we clearly suffer from a lack of out of the box thinking to really come behind, and people that for years the previous commission did not have people with business experience. And that's changing now. We do have some business people there, and we've got some small business folks.
Well, I think the idea that you could survive on only homes is a great concept. If it were reality, it wouldn't work, and it doesn't work. And I think we're figuring that out when you look at our our budget as a city and where we're going in the future. We need businesses, so it's a nice balance, but you certainly have to be open to it, because you're not going to get anything that you're proud of in a climate where you're not easy to work with.
Well, look, I didn't do a personal introduction when we started this conversation. If I had done it, I would have introduced myself as the guy who founded the Winter Springs Community Association. And one of the big reasons why we did that in 2019 was to address the imbalance, where if you have a city that's 90% residential, well, guess what? Your tax base is now also 90% on the residents, versus having that vibrant, where you go to Longwood, for example, it's closer to 50%, and so it doesn't all fall. Look, you don't want to tax the businesses out either, and I'm not saying that, but it seems like a real imbalance to where, you're having a hard enough time doing your business and surviving as a small business. It's not easy.
In the market, the market alone.
And now you've got the added weight of the regulatory environment, which it sounds like there may be some changes there with a new vendor coming in, and then.
Well, the one thing I loved was what Victoria said was that she came in and she just wanted fresh faces, fresh perspectives, fresh leadership, and across the board, that's happened over the last couple of years. And from the city manager to the finance to just staff across the board. And I think that flushing out of the old mindset is important. It's important in business to have fresh ideas. It's important in government as well, and I think that's starting to happen. So I think one of the things on the builder permitting side was all this negativity that was happening, all this perception that we're tough to do business with. Let's just change it up. And then the group that is being brought in has a strong reputation. And what started to happen after that announcement that was happening was Victoria started to receive a lot of confirmation from colleagues, from residents that are business people, saying, I've worked with them in this capacity, I've worked with them here. They are super A++, whether it's
the new guys,
the new people coming in. So instead of the group that's here getting bashed by everybody, this new group's got some supporters who say, no, we support what they're doing and how they operate. So that's encouraging. We'll see what happens with it. But I think change is good, keeps you on your toes.
Look, the residents have voted for change 2 consecutive election cycles. And so that's not only good, it's the expectation, because what we had was so bad, that if there's not change, now everybody starts to wonder, okay, what's going on? I mean, and there have been some changes. One, there was a change of the city manager, and not just a change of the city manager, but a change of the process by which the city manager was selected. And again, I give Commissioner Resnick and Victoria Bruce a lot of credit for that, because they stonewalled a process which was being rammed through according to concerns that Victoria raised about people that were no longer in City Hall but trying to influence peddle that process, and it wasn't properly advertised. They didn't even put it out really to LinkedIn. I forget what some of the examples that.
Well, they had a LinkedIn page where they promoted all the jobs that they were promoting, but they've just left ours out of that promotion.
Concerns about the process, and fortunately they stood strong, and now we have a city manager that, by all accounts, is doing a great job and trying to change things and implement some of the changes and upgrades infrastructure-wise that we've needed for a very long time. And then another big change, not only with this group that's doing the building and permitting, I mean, the biggest change that we've seen in the city in years was the change of Veolia on their way out. And those of you not aware, Veolia is the water contractor that there were residents like myself raising concerns about from before they were even brought in.
Well, I'll give you one story about Veolia. Victoria's a commissioner. You'd think you'd know that. We have a lift station right outside our house. City truck pulls up in the middle of the night. Actually, it was an unmarked car. Pulls up in the middle of the night, right in front of our house. lights are on, and I'm like, what's going on? Everything, dogs are barking, the cameras are going off. So I walk out there. There's two guys, plain clothes, smoking cigarettes. And I was like, hey guys, anything I should be worried about? Everything okay? Oh no, we're good. And they were like shuffling around. Turns out they're Veolia, working on the lift station, which we're very, appreciative of, but no marking on the truck, no uniform, no name tag, no, we have none. So anyway, the next morning I get up, go out there. The lift station's left open, the door's unlocked, the chains are, that was our first experience. We're like, if this is how they're treating their work environment in front of a city commissioner's house, I can only imagine in other areas when people aren't watching. And I think the work speaks for itself on what happened.
And that's just the thing. And this is the best argument for local focus, home rule. Like when you said it's a work environment, and that's the problem. One of the things I remember an example during one of the storms, Ian, I forget which storm it was, where they found out afterwards with a lot of the flooding that happened in the past, with past storms, leading up to the storm, you'll run some of the sprinklers in here to draw down the water levels, which gives you capacity, which wasn't done. And as we started asking, like, why didn't that happen? Who did it before? It's like, well, the people who were working on the system before lived in these neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And so they're sitting, awake at night with a storm coming, like thinking, if something happens with those plans, like my house is the first in the way. Like you have that degree of ownership of it, which you don't have when it's a 9-to-5 job and you've outsourced the entirety of the department. Things slip through the cracks because these people are worried about their homes, and their homes are not our homes. And so I'm hearing some things based on what's been publicly said in these meetings, where there is going to be at least some of the operation of the department brought back in-house as part of the new arrangement, which I think is a great idea. Because the folks that possibly show up are going to know, well, look, this is my neighborhood too, and I think there will be that personal ownership.
Well, it goes back to what Victoria said is like customer service. There is something to be said when you see a city person in a nice uniform and in a marked car, and they're obeying all the rules and following procedure, that you have a confidence level that other things are running smoothly. Right. And so there's a reason when you go to Walt Disney World and you see their associates that they're dialed in, because they wanted this experience to give confidence that this experience is going to be what you expect. And I think that's important in our city. And I think there's times where that was missing, and there's a chance to bring that piece back, and hopefully the bigger stuff as well.
Yeah. Good changes are being made. Look, there's a lot of changes yet to be made, and a lot of uncertainty about the financial stability, and some things that were said about the CAFR discussion last night, where it's like there's better record keeping now, and some things that have been improved with some changes in the finance department, but still some really, really big questions out there, about debt, about the sustainability of how we're going to pay for some of the improvements that are needed, but you're never going to be able to, and this is back to the premise of this discussion, you're never going to be able to address those if you're talking past each other and not to each other, which unfortunately it seems like there's a lot of that going on in the city, on the dais. There's a lot of posturing. I mean, even the whole thing of like limiting, and again, I'm not advocating that we let public input go forever, but when you have a structure in the city council meeting which prevents dialogue, and it's the rules, and so they do enforce the rules, it's good, but you're not even allowed to have I can go give a 3-minute speech. How productive is that going to be? If everybody gives their 3-minute speech and you can't have that dialogue. So it creates an environment where people are naturally going to be driving wedges between each other, because it's like talking around each other, and it's a prepared speech. I mean, the last commission was notorious for only giving like written statements.
Well, did you see the mayor last night?
I haven't watched it yet.
He handed out a bunch of papers and he fumbled the papers and they got mixed up and he was trying to read it, but then he missed a page and he was completely clueless of what he wanted to say because he didn't have it on paper. Right? When I mean, it's just not that difficult. Like, but I think it's what I like is that, we're now on YouTube.
Yes.
So more people can easily watch it.
Another big change, which Victoria drove.
It seems like a little one, but it's not.
It's not because it establishes trust. And our city has had a trust deficit for years. And it goes back to things that have happened along the way where, we were told, for example, when the fish kill incident happened in the Highlands in 2021, I think, that was because there was too much chlorine in the water. Right? Like that's the initial lie. Okay, people just want to like they can accept the fact that something broke, right? But if you lie about it, that's a different issue.
There's an old saying like bad news doesn't get better with time.
Right, exactly.
I mean, just be honest and move on.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that.
Right. And so then you have the penny sales tax issue where some of the background on that, right? So they announced when the bridges collapsed, or they didn't collapse, but they were not operable, that it was going to be between 12 and 18 months for them to be fixed because we didn't have contractors lined up to fix them, which meant that the penny sales tax, which had been taken to be applied to those itemized projects, wasn't being applied to those itemized projects. And that's what Grant Malloy found out in the other audits. And so you have this history of the city using taxpayer dollars that they were by referendum required to spend on X, Y, and Z, according to the contract that they had with the voters who approved the tax. Then, under the cover of darkness, on a consent agenda, without any discussion, reallocating those, which the auditor said was a violation of the public trust.
And the argument then became it wasn't illegal. Like, it doesn't have to be illegal to be dumb. It doesn't have to be illegal to be
He
not
said it wasn't
honest.
criminal.
Right, criminal.
Which nobody said it was, but it was unethical and it was against the will of the voters.
Right. That was
according to the referendum which was passed.
Right.
And
then it ended up biting us in the butt because we needed it to be spent the way it was supposed to be spent.
And now we can't drive over our bridges. Which arguably we could have if they'd been properly maintained. But so when I say there's a trust deficit, that's what I mean. To where I don't think that people would have nearly as hard a time accepting that, look, we need to maybe raise this rate a little bit to cover this. As long as people understand what it's going towards. Look, the penny sales tax is a perfect example. People vote in order to pay towards something if they feel like it's worth it. Penny sales tax always passes because people understand, at least until Winter Springs came along, how it was going to be used according to a predetermined set of projects. Right. But now we've got an issue here in our city where we've just robbed Peter to pay Paul over here without telling anybody. And so now there's a trust deficit where people are saying, okay, if you kind of shifted around the penny sales tax money, how do we know that you're not going to shift around, the stormwater fee as well? And that's where some of the trust is broken down, and the only real defense is, well, we got new people up there now that aren't going to do what the last people did. But still, it takes time to rebuild that trust, which is why it's so important. And to your point, the little thing of even allowing comments on social media is actually a really, really big thing because it gets.
I'm talking even smaller than that. Like last night, I'm listening to it on YouTube. It's minimized on my phone, so I can still listen while I'm looking at the agenda and the supporting documents. Whereas on the old way, I'd have to listen. It was bad. It was low volume, and then if you went to go look at the agenda, it would disconnect, and You have to go re-find it again. And so just little tiny things. It allows people to get more involved, listen. And then now it's on YouTube. We can break it down. We can break it down and really disseminate what was spoken about over 4 or 5 hours, whereas in the past it was buried and you can't find it and it's not easy to share and the transparency is just not there.
I get asked all the time, what meeting was it where that commissioner said that? And there's actually a great keyword search, not quite to the level of like word by word transcription, to where you can on the city's website go search for terms. It will pull up links for certain discussion points. And then you click that and it takes you to that point in the video where that was said. It's very, very powerful.
Well, I need that, but I think it should be easier.
It's there.
I think
it's
they
on
should
the website now.
I think they should build a Winter Springs AI, right? Make it public, feed all the meeting transcripts. So all you have from the history of Winter Springs, as far back as we have them, and then all you'd have to say, when was the pickleball courts approved and who was there? Because it would take all that data and so I think we should be the first city to do that
with links so that people can verify.
Go watch it. Look,
you gotta trust but verify.
Trust verify, but at least it could kind of narrow it down to the date, the time, the agenda, or the multiple agendas that was discussed, because that's important for historical reference, especially for new people that are transients that are moving in and who don't know the history. They don't know the long history that this has been going on, but.
And context matters. The history matters because we didn't get to where we are in a vacuum. And a lot of the ways that decisions are made and the problems that we're having to deal with are because of things that have happened in the past leading up. I mean, my history starts in 2017. So that's like my starting point. But that's why I constantly try to talk to people who've been here a long time before that, because again, going back to the 30-second soundbite, like you have to be brought into the loop of what happened before you, which is why I just cringe when I hear people stand up at these meetings and say, "Hey, let's not harp on the past." It's like, no, we are here because of where we've been, and we don't. The flip side to that is we can't ignore it because we're going to end up repeating it, and so you have to have that sense of history. I mean, I get it. We need to move on and move forward, but we can't do that if we ignore the lessons of the past, and that's what we're trying to sort through. Look, I think this is going to be a really cool discussion, really cool show. Kind of bringing it to a close. What would you tell the residents or the commit? Like what's the thing that you feel like you need from the city? If they could do a couple things, just really help business guys like you doing business in this city. What are some of those?
I think promote the city. I mean, let's talk about like be an advocate for all the wonderful things the city's has. I mean, the mayor says all the time, we got a good thing going, right? But when from a resident, from an outsider looking in, it's all noise. It's all disruption. It's all pain and agony. Whether it's doing business, whether it's the water, whether it's businesses shutting down, whether it's the lake not being in the right place for business, whatever it is, you just hear this negativity. So I think just promoting the city. We need I don't know if we need a PR firm or just the Matt Reeser just putting out more interviews and more things about how wonderful the city is, because it is a great city. And I think the more people hear that, the more they can come get involved. And I think that's another thing. Instead of blocking comments and instead of hiding the minutes in some internal system, make it broadly available. Make the comments more accessible. Be more open with the feedback so that the more people can be involved and more people can contribute to our future, instead of it just being a couple people in charge when...
It's the echo chamber. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because if we're going to do what you say, which is put, honestly, what I think is an accurate picture of this being a great place to live. We all chose to be here because there's something we liked about it.
Well, look where we're located. You got an international airport in Sanford. You got another international airport over here. We're right in the middle on a freeway that's getting expanded. Then you got the exit. You got this giant, beautiful piece of property which could be the centerpiece.
But if we're going to do that, we have to stop implying, as I've heard things about me that if you raise a concern that somehow you're tearing the city down. It's the same. It contributes to that, like talking past each other. You hear it nationally, right? Regardless of what party's in power. And it's like, we're going to war. Like, when we've been at war, it's the party that is in power at the time saying, if you don't support the war, you're unpatriotic. You know, when it was a Democrat president, the Republicans criticizing they were unpatriotic. When the Republicans are, if you criticize, you're not patriotic. I can't tell you how many times it has been insinuated about me that because I'm willing to say, hey, let's fix our water. My family is having some issues. Let's fix our water. That somehow, because I'm criticizing an obvious problem, that I'm doing that because I don't love the city. I'm doing it because I love the city. If I didn't love the city, why would I care? You know, why would I be engaged to the degree that I have? You know, and we just have to drop this false insinuation that criticism is unpatriotic.
Well, if we hear each other.
And I say that the reason that what you're calling noise is not the criticism. What you're calling noise are people who are feeling threatened politically by the criticism, then shouting down the critics.
Well, last night's a perfect example. Diaz and Cade, they were talking about a very important subject, but then there was a personal attack. One thrown at one, and next thing you know, we're not talking about the subject anymore. We're talking about personal, indifferences, and it's like, come on, guys, if you're in this position, you gotta have a little thicker skin. We gotta have a lively debate. We can disagree, but we've got to talk about this and see it through, because you gotta put the personal attacks aside. But it's been going on a long time, and
it goes back years.
And as long as you're going to be willing to do what you've done and speak out, you're going to feel the retribution in some way.
Oh, sure. It comes with the territory.
It comes with the territory, and you've got people who are like tapping in for a second, making a comment and tapping out, have no idea what's going on, but their voice is loud because they want to be loud. But that's okay. That's okay. But if you're consistent in your messaging, if you're consistent in your heart and where you're trying to do it, the truth will bubble to the top, and then the results will come with it. Maybe slower than we'd like, but at least we're moving in the right direction.
Right.
So transparency is the key to all this, and I think that doing more of these videos, and the city doing more of these videos, but then maybe even promoting the beautiful place we are. Instead of talking about the lake being a detriment, let's talk about how it's an advantage. Let's talk about the wonderful things. And then maybe we'll invite people who are tired of the traffic in Southwest Orlando, like I was, to come over here and open a business.
Right, exactly. Realize how great we have.
Right. Whereas when Victoria had to drag me tooth and nail. I wouldn't say tooth and nail, but it was pretty, because I loved Dr. Phillips. I grew up there. I went to elementary school, high school. I told my daughter, this is where you're going to high school. And next thing you know, I moved her to Winter Springs High School. She was like, what? But she ended up loving Winter Springs High School. Graduated there and is now at FAU. But I absolutely love this place. And it was only, after, disregarding the noise because I wanted to be with Victoria, that I'm here and I got through it. But if I had just gone by what I had heard, I probably would have been discouraged. But so we need to lower the temperature, as I've heard people say, be more welcoming to different ideas, bring in the businesses that can, balance this community, and then listen to our community more, and take that feedback and help make decisions that they want to have happen. For example, like, what do you want in this empty restaurant right here? I'm interested to know. Do you want another Italian restaurant? And it was interesting. We had like 800 responses on that survey, and they want an Italian restaurant to come back.
Of course.
Yeah, that's what people want.
Right.
And so that is I think that makes everything easier when you've got the support of a group that's actively involved. And so that's what this is about, in the loop.
Absolutely.
And if there's any stories out there that we should be aware of that should be on the show, reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to have you on the show to discuss that subject matter. It could be anything. One of the things that I think got Victoria on the map was doing an interview with Bob Sibley about the artesian well, and whether you're for it or against it. It got her on the map because she was talking about community issues, and I think more of that needs to happen, and then people can pick which side they're on because they're informed and educated on it. So we'll see how this turns out. A little worried about the sound, but at least we've got a kind of a clue. And like I said, done's better than perfect. So thank you for coming over, man.
This is great.
Yeah.
Good conversation.
All right, brother. Thank you. We'll see you.